What by Satan's burning manhood happened to Bloodlines 2? Popular question, as it turns out, as even the people working on the game can only really just shrug and say we don't know either. Which really does tell you everything you need to know, doesn't it? But in case you're interested in a little bit more detail, we have here a fairly lengthy post from Chris Avellone. Avellone? I think I've heard it pronounced like that, so I'm going to roll with it, where he talks a little bit about his point of view, his impressions, how he viewed the whole debacle, and a little bit of his personal input on it as well. It's a fairly long and circuitous post, so I'm mostly going to be talking about it and paraphrasing. I'll try to remember to put it in the description down below so you can have a look at it yourself if you are interested. So, what can Chris really tell us here? Again, not necessarily all that much, as he doesn't really know what the hell happened either. And he should be in a position to know, as not only was he a fairly high-ranking individual in the process, he is also an old hat in the video game entertainment industry, having worked as a writer and a producer for many titles, including some fairly big ones like Baldur's Gate and Divinity as well. He is an experienced member of the industry, though he has been in some choppy waters as of late, as last year he was accused by 3 women of having engaged in sexual misconduct and harassment. And I say accused, because as far as I'm aware, that's pretty much all that actually happened out of it. Basically, some women appeared and went, "He did it!" And then the Twitter mob went, "Okay, that's all we need to know, he's guilty." And there you are. Several companies then decided to distance themselves from Chris Avellone, again I'm presuming, including, I believe it was Paradox, who said they hadn't used anything he had written for absolute ages, and what little they had used they had long since overwritten, which is a rather churlish thing to say, but there you go, I suppose. And the more recent development is that Chris has actually launched a suit against his accusers, which all I can say to that is, you go, girl. You absolutely go, girl, because here's the thing. Accusations like these, although they may not carry any legal weight, because there doesn't seem to be any evidence or anything backing this up at all, it carries tremendous social weight. The entire Me Too movement, God, how many people had their lives ruined over literally nothing but pure accusations. Now, not being God, though I do make a pretty damn good impersonation of him on occasion when it comes to my predictions, I can't say what the truth is in any of these matters. But I do know that these accusations, again, can absolutely destroy lives and careers outright. And it is only right that Chris, if he believes that he is indeed innocent of this, takes the legal road and says, okay, you've made an accusation, you have damaged my reputation, you will either justify this or you will pay me. Anywho, I'm not going to go too deeply into that here. We'll get back to the Bloodlines 2 thing. There are a couple of interesting things. First and foremost, he clarifies that he wasn't apparently actually fired from the project, which was what everyone was reporting at the time, and to be fair, I'm guilty of that as well, and that was due to a particularly ham-fisted marketing, or well, PR announcement, more correctly. His side of the story is that his contract ran out. He was under a 2.5-year contract, and that ended, and he was not renewed, which kinda, I would say, tomato to that. Because if you're under a contract with a company and they choose to not renew, well, technically speaking, you have not been fired. That is correct. But neither have you been hired, I suppose. Semantics, I guess. And furthermore, Paradox apparently was telling the truth. They hadn't used anything that he had produced for 2.5 years. Which, again, raises some questions. Okay, so this guy's been working for them. Bearing in mind, again, this is not a complete amateur here. He's not some random newbie they picked off the streets. In fact, he himself believes that the reason why they hired him was to have some RPG cred behind their title. And again, he's an old hat, and yet they didn't use anything for 2.5 years? Either Chris forgot how to write, I guess, or there was, as I previously speculated, some pretty darn hefty opinions in the narrative design team, some jockeying from position there. That's what I was speculating to begin with as well, because just the entire collapse of it smells to me like you have some very opinionated personalities clashing rather violently, which leads to a lot more drama around the office. To further maybe semi-confirm this as well, again, pure speculation, don't get me wrong, apparently all of the people that he worked with directly, all of them are gone now. None of them are currently working in, as far as I can tell, the same field or at the very least on the project. And furthermore, even more interestingly, that was from Hardsuit Labs, all of the Paradox people as well have also disappeared. Whew. That sounds like some scorched earth policy right there, which again kinda, Paradox also yeeted their entire quality assurance team a while ago as well. There's some internal kniving, there's some internal shivving going on. Paradox, it looks like. He also mentions the Brian Mitsuda thing as well. Apparently, he too was brought on primarily as a marketing asset. Of course, he didn't know a damn thing about that. He assumed that he was being brought on as a writer. Both Brian and Chris were part of the pitch team, I believe, that pitched this to Paradox. Chris, at the very least, was. And apparently, Paradox was overjoyed by this. They barely got like 2/3 through or 1/3 or so through the PowerPoint presentation before they were just sitting there chatting like, wouldn't this be awesome, wouldn't this be cool, wouldn't this be great, and contracts were signed and off the project went. It's a pretty damn good pitch, certainly. And yet, clearly, perhaps that was the problem. The pitch was so good that nobody actually stopped to think, hold on, do we actually want these things? And so Chris here was not used for his writing talent. Brian was not used for his writing talents. Instead, both of their names were kind of just stapled on the box, basically, to bring in the fans, which, again, I have more and more faith in my theory that what probably happened here is that you've got a bunch of internal Paradox people of probably a certain persuasion who are new, who didn't make necessarily the best of the writing, but they've gotten into positions of influence within the company, and they brought these guys on to give credibility to it as sort of a smokescreen, to try and hide the writing behind, and ghostwrite it a little bit. And I think those people are probably not very talented. And I say this because, well, you can look at the game, you can look at the technical quality, you can look at the quests we have seen. It didn't look particularly good. And again, why would you hire on a person for a 2.5-year contract just to use his name as a cover? That sounds like a criminal waste of money to me, unless there's some pretty hefty internal politicking going on round about there. That is not good. And apparently as well, the firing of Brian came as quite a shock to a lot of the people, including those who were doing some voice work and was it more music work from them as well. Womb Music, apparently. Thank you for the compliment. VTMB was such an inspiring game to work on. I can't really talk about VTMB2, but I will say that Brian Mitsuda leaving was devastating. He was the soul of the project. That doesn't sound like a person you would fire for some minor offense or some minor problem. Nor does it sound like it would be a person that you would fire after just having been a marketing personality. The way everyone is basically talking about him kind of sounds like, again, I keep bringing up my pet theory here, but it does make a certain amount of sense, doesn't it? I think Brian might have been the leader of the Keep Vampire the Masquerade Bloodline 2 the way it's supposed to be. Dark, gritty, brutal, violent. With a few modifications. He did say that he wouldn't make the game today, which are a few warning bells right there. And then probably other people had very, 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 very different views. And then when he was fired, that was essentially all of that internal nonsense coming to a head and just... Now, Chris does mention that he could talk about some other people's circumstances around their firings, etc., but that he doesn't want to, and that there's also a lot of legalistic nonsense surrounding it as well, which there absolutely is. Companies don't want to give you a reason for why they are firing you, because technically speaking, it's actually really difficult to fire people. You either need to write it into their contract, in which case you want to give them as little information as humanly possible, so that they can't accuse you of anything. That is definitely one thing to do, and to be fair, that's a good thing as well. I know some pretty... see, this is not a good, bad kind of thing. There are some shit companies out there, and Paradox is starting to sound like one, but there are some shit employees out there as well. And I've heard more than one horror story of employees coming back to sue their companies because they told them, like, okay, you're just not fitting in with the team here, you're disruptive, sorry, we can't keep you on the team. And then they were fired. Well, that's not technically a valid excuse according to their contract, so, you know, two sides of that particular pie. But, this is interesting. As little hard as this really says, to me at least, it seems to back up a lot of my own assumptions about the nature of the internal struggles at Paradox, and perhaps between Paradox and Hardsuit Labs. Which raises the question then, okay, let's assume here that was the problem. The problem was the internal disagreement between the various parties. If Paradox then finds another company to work on it, will it be better? Will it be worse? Will it be stuck in limbo now? Will they try and, get some of the original product back into it? Will they have to start entirely from scratch, etc.? It raises even more questions than it answers in that department. All I think we can say for sure is, we ain't seeing hide nor hair of Bloodlines 2 for quite some time. Anywho, let me know what you think about all of this. Maybe you're going to go and read the article, presuming I remember to link it again, which, don't trust me on that, I do have the memory of a goldfish. But anywho, what do you think about this? Does this make sense? Does this back up your own assumptions, or what? I mean, this is kind of crazy, isn't it? This was a huge announcement, had so much hype behind it. And now it's in a hole in the ground. Very, very deeply buried. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.